With the teachers' strike dragging on, applications open Tuesday for parents to apply for support to cover the costs of keeping their kids home from school. Here to comment further about this, as well as the upcoming municipal election, is legislative correspondent with the National Post, Tyler Dawson. Tyler, welcome back. Thanks for joining me.
Good to be back.
All right, so Tyler, when it comes to this support for parents from the province, there's also additional daycare funding support based on income, right?
Yeah, so the way it all works is you've got this $150 per week per child, as long as that child is 12 and under, that the government has. This is sort of new funding that the government has come up with in the last couple of weeks. But there's also sort of a fee guide or a schedule of funding for out of school care and daycare. And the rate that the government pays is higher in the summer than it is in the winter and the fall, I guess, because children are normally in schools. The government is shifting back to its summer fee schedule in order to support parents through the teacher strike. And as you mentioned, it is based on income. So the highest amount goes to people with an income of less than $49,000, and it sort of decreases as one's income goes up. So that's something that is probably not available to all parents in the province, but certainly will be helpful to some. And then there's also funding available specifically for parents of children with disabilities. There's a $30 a day and a $60 a day payment that is available to help with the costs of taking care of those kids while they're at home. And as anyone who has kids or has friends who have kids knows, this has been a little bit of a challenging time, especially for those who maybe can't work from home or don't have older kids that can stay home on their own. So they've been scrambling a little bit to find alternatives to keep kids home from school. And so these costs will be diminished slightly by the government spending on this one.
Yeah, obviously, like you're saying there, the strike means many changes and many challenges for families of Alberta, for sure. Okay, switching gears here, gasoline prices are falling around the country, including here in Alberta. So, Tyler, what are the prices right now looking like in Edmonton and Calgary, for example?
Yeah, they're a little bit under $1.20. I mean, I'm sure you can still find some gas stations that are charging more than that, but that's sort of where the trend is at the moment. And there's some prediction that it's actually going to drop below $1 in the winter months, $1 per liter for gasoline. So obviously, the lowest prices that we've seen in a very, very long time. But there's a dark side to this too, right? Like obviously, people don't want to be paying lots for gasoline. They're happy to see low prices at the pump. But this has some pretty significant implications for the provincial government when it comes to writing its budget. The government sort of sets a baseline oil price target. They say, it's going to be X over the course of 2025. That means we'll get X number of revenue from it. And that goes into a lot of the budgeting calculations. And the number that the government had in mind for 2025 was $63.75 per barrel of oil. And oil is actually selling for less than $60 a barrel at the moment. Um, it's been higher over the course of the year, so it's not like it's been low for the entire 10 months of the year so far, or 9 months of the year so far. But if this trend does continue, we'll see a little bit of a double-edged sword here in terms of lower prices at the pump, but less resource revenue coming in to the province, less tax revenue coming in from gasoline to the province and things like that.
All right. Well, speaking of, gas and cars, Wednesday afternoon, Danielle Smith rolled out a new license plate design it includes, I guess, the motto "Strong and Free" on them. Now, didn't she have something to do with the last plate design or slogan?
She was not involved in it personally, but there was a plate redesign plan back when she was leader of the Wild Rose Party, it would have been, I guess. This actually began under Ed Stelmach and then continued after that. There was a design contest and designs came out and people voted on the design and they never really went anywhere. People decided to stick with the old Wild Rose country license plates that you see all over the province. But I guess it's time for a redesign. So there once again will be designs put out there. There will be public voting on which designs people like. And it will, as you say, have the motto "Strong and Free" on it, which, as some people have pointed out, is also the United Conservative Party's slogan. But it's the provincial slogan as well. So, but I'm sure we're going to see a little bit of drama about what slogan is going on the new license plate. And, who knows? Maybe it goes the way of the 2014 discussion and we wind up with the same license plates all over again.
Yeah, was that the Alberta.ca, which people weren't too crazy about?
They got rid of the slogan and just put alberta.ca on the license plate, which is not the most exciting thing to have on your license plate or the most exciting website to visit, frankly, if you decide to maybe they put a QR code on it and go to some fun part of the website. Who knows?
Exactly. I mean, it's such a beautiful province. Like, let's show off more of that instead of a website. Okay, Tyler, Monday is municipal election day in Alberta. There are many issues to be discussed and many different challenges in municipalities across the province. And Tyler, the concerns are different in big cities compared to smaller, more rural municipalities, obviously. So can you dive into that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I think that when you look at the big cities, you're looking at things like transit, you're looking at fights over bike lanes, you're certainly looking at sort of urban disorder and crime, things like that. If you go to small town in rural Alberta, bike lanes are not going to be as nearly a touchy a topic, unless maybe you're driving into Calgary and Edmonton and getting frustrated about the bike lanes there. But certainly crime is still an issue all over the province, something that is on the top of mind for many, many people. Um, in the big cities, there's some concern over sort of relationships between the province and the federal government and how they're navigating those kind of things. There's obviously everywhere going to be some concern about property taxes and the expenditure of money for municipal services, things like that. So a wide variety of issues, and I do think there's some differences between the communities that dot this province all over the place. The big change from this year, really has nothing to do with the issues that are up for debate, but it does have everything to do with the fact that there are now municipal political parties in Edmonton and Calgary. This is sort of designed to have a bit of a clearer sense of what municipal politicians stand for, and is probably, conservatives have long been frustrated in this province that we send conservative MPs to Ottawa and largely conservative MLAs to Edmonton to represent constituents. But at the municipal level, politicians tend to be relatively progressive. Voters tend to elect progressive town councilors and mayors and things like that. So there has been this idea that if you can have political parties with some stronger branding, that you might get more conservatives onto city councils around the province. So I guess we'll see if how that test plays out, if it comes to fruition in Edmonton and Calgary on this one. Voting day is next Monday, if people were not aware of that. So read up on your local councilors and mayors and get ready to vote.
Right. Oh my goodness, it's going to be a big one. Okay, a government panel has recommended that Alberta reform the way it funds post-secondary education. So it recommends that funding be based upon staffing costs, the university's performance, and the enrollment in order to determine how much funding a school should get. So maybe dive into this a little bit as well here.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what this is going to look like yet. The panel, which was chaired by Jack Mintz, who's a University of Calgary economist, made these recommendations of looking at, enrollment and research and stuff like that in order to determine what funding would look like for individual post secondary institutions in the province. Um, but the government has not said that it's going to accept those recommendations just yet. It says it's going to do consultations with stakeholders and evaluate the recommendations in that context before it commits to anything, which I suppose it makes sense. You wouldn't necessarily want to go wholesale adopting a new funding formula or something like that without finding out, in a little more detail how it might affect some of the universities, colleges, whatnot in the province. So a little bit unclear at the moment, but certainly there is this move afoot to change that funding formula. And I think that's something that we'll continue to hear about over the next year or so.
Okay. Speaking of education and funding, it looks like a new citizen initiative petition is kicked off. This one, not about succession, but it's about ending public funding for private and independent schools in the province. So, Tyler, how much funding goes to these private and independent schools?
I believe it's about $360 million. And so, it sounds like a big chunk of change, but the overall education spend in the province is more than $10 billion each year. So it's sort of a fraction of that overall cost when you really sort of break it down. And Alberta has funded private and independent schools for a very long time. This is not like this is new. And I believe it funds up to about 70% per person, per student, that is, attending those schools. But in the context of the teachers' strike, it has been a little bit controversial. If the government cannot find the money to pay teachers more, hire more educational assistants, that's what critics are saying, that there doesn't seem to be this money available for public schools. So why is money being given to private schools? And this petition, unlike the one that Thomas Lukasik is running under to get the main secession one at the moment, the Stay in Canada secession vote, is being run under the old rules. So he needs to get something like 300,000 signatures on that one. This one only needs about 170, 180,000 signatures on it. So it's a much lower bar to get a referendum question put before Albertans or get this put before the legislature for a vote of some kind. So that's what's going on that front. And there's been a little bit of blowback from sort of the independent school community concerned that they could lose their funding. But I guess we'll have to see if they, first of all, if they get their signatures and then what happens to it after that.
Yeah, lots happening there for sure. Alberta's government is acting to do research into a potential future pipeline into northern BC, as we've been hearing all about this. So this has obviously kicked off a spat with BC, which says that it's not a real project. So Tyler, please maybe tell us a little bit more about this feud that seems to be brewing.
Whatever comes up, we feel like we've been here before, right? This does not feel like a particularly new fight between Alberta and British Columbia.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
so
it's a
prime
fight that's simmering, not brewing.
it is a forever simmering fight for
Yes.
sure. Premier David Eby in BC has basically said that this is not a real project. There's no private proponent, there's no private money being put up for it, there's no route at this point, and all of that is essentially true. The Alberta government is funding a study to find out a pipeline route and then get that before the federal government's major projects office, and then hopefully at that point a private proponent is going to come forward and sort of take over the project. Um, so David Eby does not want this for a variety of reasons, and there's some major hurdles to getting this done. Part of that is that you have a ban on heavy crude being transported by tanker off the northwestern BC coast. That ban has been in effect sort of unofficially since the 1970s, has been in effect by legislation since 2019. In order to actually export oil off the northwestern BC coast, which is what this pipeline would purport to do, you need to repeal that legislation. If you repeal that legislation, the British Columbia government says that it's going to lose the support of coastal First Nations for a bunch of liquefied natural gas plants that it's building on the coast there. Plants that have public or private money involved, that are in more than sort of a pie in the sky phase. So it says there's some pretty serious consequences if this goes ahead. The federal government, meanwhile, you have Tim Hodgson, who's the natural resources minister, I should say. He says that Alberta is going to need to get BC on side in order to get this pipeline built. The Alberta government is saying, well, look, this is an interprovincial pipeline. This is not British Columbia's call to make. This is not even Alberta's call to make. It's the federal government's call to make on whether or not this thing goes ahead. So you have this real war of words sort of circulating between the British Columbia government, the Alberta government, and the federal government is kind of getting roped into this as well. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen. This proposal is not actually out there. The Major Projects Office has not actually made a decision about it. There is no route that's yet developed, but you can see the signs of where this is going to go sort of in May of next year when this proposal is finally before the Major Projects Office.
Oh, the pipeline drama. It
The
just
pipeline drama, it
continues.
never ends.
No. Legislative correspondent with the National Post, Tyler Dawson, thanks so much for joining me today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.